Hello and welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, your gifted underachievers discuss whether there's an audience for everyone's work, and if there is, how do you find it? Hope you enjoy.
Hey, James.
Yes, Pat.
I have a question for you.
Oh, ask away.
If we're talking about just, creative workers in general,
Right.
mid-level or not, the question is there an audience for everybody's work?
Is there an audience for everybody's work?
Yeah.
For mid-level creatives, you mean? Right?
Yeah,
People
for people whose work is of a standard that it's actually professionally adept enough to have an audience. Is every person at that level, do they have an audience?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think as long as you find value in the work that you're doing, there is going to be an audience for it because it is genuine work. It is genuine creative work, right?
Okay.
Does that mean there's going to be a huge audience and you're going to make a fortune? No. Does it mean that you're going to be able to find your audience, meaning you're going to be able to put your work in front of them? No. But yes, I absolutely believe there's an audience out there. And I think then, really, as I've noted, the challenge becomes how do you get in front of that audience? And, is it a big audience? Who knows? But it doesn't, in this world, it doesn't have to be a huge audience.
No.
To get something from it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, this comes off of something we were talking with Joe Panapinto. Right.
Yeah.
And so in talking about publishing now only wants to pick up things that it knows there's a gigantic audience for. And so, how do you know if there's a gigantic audience for what you want to do? Well, you kind of don't, and you have to go out there and figure it out. But I definitely think that yes, there's an audience.
Okay.
How about you? Where do you
agree?
stand?
I agree. I think that, I like quite weird stuff. I'm just even thinking of David Lynch and some of the musical acts that I've come into my orbit. I think not only is there an audience for every type of creative work that has hit a certain level, but that the audience can find you 20 years hence. So in the broadest sense, like I just discovered this Hungarian guitarist that was making albums in the 60s. And I'm now his audience. I mean,
Right.
I don't even know if the guy's still alive, right? So if you're talking about generally, I'm an audience for Mary Shelley's work right now because I'm reading her book. So there's always, I think, going to be an audience if you can get your work out there. That's the part, as you said, that can be tricky. But yeah, I agree. I've got a friend who writes transgressive fiction. Some of the stuff coming out of his pen is pretty crazy. It's pretty bizarre. I believe there's an audience for it.
Absolutely. Now, so here's the thing that people might really be interested. Okay, so I have an audience, right? And when you're going for one of these gated opportunities, right? So, well, let me back up a little bit. So one of the things that I like to talk about with the people I work with is instead of building a platform, let's leverage somebody else's platform, right? Because anybody who has a platform is looking for content.
Yeah.
If you are a match for their audience, then they're likely going to be, oh, thank you. I need that content to keep my audience entertained and with me, right? And so when you go to that person, the gatekeepers, so to speak, they may say, well, how do I know you have an audience, or how do I know you're part of my audience? And so I think the question then becomes, how can you establish to somebody else that there's an audience for your work?
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that's a tough question.
Yeah. And by gatekeepers, I just want to clarify for anybody who's not aware of what we're talking about. You're referring the publishing industry would be agents and publishers. In the acting industry, it would be agents again and studios or whoever hires actors. So in the visual arts world, it would be galleries probably and museums. And so anyway, how can you establish that you have an audience for those people? Because they're the ones who want, they want the gate to matter. If you write a play or you're an actor and you're in a play and nobody wants to see that play or nobody wants to see you in it, then nobody's ever going to put that play on for you to be able to share your stuff with your audience. So how can you establish for the gatekeepers that you have an audience?
Yeah. So it's a real chicken or the egg, right? And you see this a lot in movies where they say, we've got to have a name.
Yeah.
So you can have somebody who would be perfect for the role, but then they say, no, we got to have a name. And so then you have to compromise. And maybe the movie isn't quite as good as you wanted because, it's just not the right person. In a gallery, if I put your art in my gallery, who's going to show up?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And this happens to visual artists I know that I've known is the gallery does not want the new stuff they're working on. They want them to keep producing the same type of art because that's what the gallery already knows sells. So do you have any ideas? How can you establish that you have an audience?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the way that we do it in publishing is social media is the big one, right?
Oh, like
so
followers on Instagram or something?
I've got like 50,000 followers here or
But
100,000.
do they buy books?
No, I think that's a wrong assumption that publishing, and I think you could probably go into all these different industries and there's sort of a core belief that this is how you can measure if somebody has a potential audience or has an audience, and it isn't going to translate into what they want. It's not going to it's not going to bring people into the gallery to buy paintings.
No.
It's all those kinds of things. And it's that chicken or the egg, right? Until you have an audience, how can you prove that you have an audience?
Well, is it the same answer that you gave for the last question, which was how do you find your audience? You said by leveraging somebody else's audience. So do you do that with the galleries too? Is it step 2? Let's say you have a show with somebody else who does have an audience and you come to the gallery with that show already organized with the other person. You say, we want to do a show together. Yeah, sure. The gallery has the chance to say, no, we don't want your schmucky work in there. We just want this superstar's work. But if the superstar says I'm not doing it unless my schmucky friend gets their art in there too. I mean, I'm just spitballing. I have no idea how this stuff works. Then maybe you'll get a chance. I don't know.
Yeah. So building an audience, I would say, is that leveraging somebody else's platform, right?
Yeah.
To get their people to say, oh, this is somebody I'm interested in. So for an artist, I think you've got a great idea, which is the same kind of leveraging where it's almost like being the opening act, right?
Yeah.
So I opened for this very well-known artist, or I was part of this very well-known artist show. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that is the crux of the matter. And I think maybe the way to think about it is, how do I get my work in front of my potential audience?
Yeah.
As opposed to how do I appease a gallery owner or an editor or something like that. And maybe there's a certain leveraging of social media, the internet, where you use it any way that you can find where there's democratization of exposure, perhaps.
Yeah, could be that. And so could also be, there's another thing that popped up in my head, which is you're saying it's not just about getting in the pockets of the galleries or the publishers. It's more about how do you get your work in front of an audience. And then my postscript or the end of that sentence is without working for free.
Right.
Because you can get your work in front of an audience if you're willing to do everything for free.
Right.
But that is not a viable business model for any artist. So that's what we're talking about, really, is how do you get it in front of people without working for free?
Yeah. So, and I mean, we've talked about this, does working for exposure, is it really worthwhile?
Yeah, and we've decided that it is not.
And
It's a scam.
it is not.
Yeah.
But I think if somebody has a podcast that is devoted to a specific type of art,
Yeah.
getting on their podcast and saying, if you go to my website, I am selling art that your audience is interested in.
Yeah, I don't consider being interviewed working for free.
Yeah.
I consider that publicity or marketing.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean is, trying to discern, does this have real marketing value as opposed to somebody's just kind of using what I've got to up their cachet or something like that.
Like I wouldn't consider being at a writing festival, on a panel, or being at in an art show, a giant art show, as one of many, many exhibitors. I don't consider that working for free. I consider that marketing.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I was thinking about, somebody who has a cafe and says, "Oh, let me put your art up on the walls."
Right.
That's not working for free.
No, that's a form of marketing.
I think the working for free is, hey, do a painting for me and I will put it on my wall.
Yeah, I would say the fields that lend itself most to being asked to work for free are definitely music and potentially also acting. But mostly music. People get asked all the time, "Oh, can you bring your guitar, to my wedding?" No.
Yeah, so there's got to be some discernment. So to bring this back, is there an audience? Yes. If you are gaining value from the work that you're producing, then absolutely. How do you gain access to the potential audience? Well, you can leverage somebody else's platform.
Yeah.
And you can use that as a way to not only try and sell whatever that product is, but to then turn around to gatekeepers and say, "Hey, I have been in front of this number of people because I was on this podcast, I was in on that show."
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. And I think after that, it'd be interesting to hear from listeners.
Yeah, I do too. And even some of our guests, I don't know. I mean, did being on this podcast move the needle for them in any way? It would kind of depend, because in the early days, less so, fewer listeners. Now more listeners, possibly. But how do you separate it? How do you know what led to what?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, that, Kath Monstream, who we talk about.
Yeah.
One of the ways that she's drawn attention to herself is through Red Hot Chili Dippers, which is her cold swimming group that she had. I don't know if she was the founder or one of the founders.
I think she was, yeah.
She's got a huge audience for that on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure a lot of that leads off to her work as an artist.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah. Very interesting.
So,
yeah.
So maybe you do something interesting that'll drive an audience that is tangential.
Yeah. And also look for opportunities to collaborate, because whether you're, leveraging somebody's platform, I'm doing air quotes because that's a specific type of thinking, really. But I think collaboration can potentially more than double your audience if the person you're collaborating with has a solid audience that also, that makes sense for your work.
Yeah. Okay. And we'd love to hear from you. More ideas. More ideas.
So please do.
Thanks so much for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. We would love to hear how we're doing, so please leave a comment, join our chat page, or send us an email to giftedunderachievers@substack.com. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Hope you have a great creative week.